Dear friends and colleagues of Professor Wilfred Felix from all over the world, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Intellectual giant and theological legend, Professor Felix Wilfred is no more with us. He entered the realm of eternity on the 7th of January 2025 at about 7:50 p.m. I wonder if there will ever come a day when the shock refuses to quit, when tears on our eyes will have their way out, when wave after wave of sorrow brings with it a never receding tide of memories of my beloved mentor, guide, and dear friend, Professor Felix Wilfred. My dear friends, we have gathered here in this cyberspace to reminisce the legendary life and the singular contributions of Professor Wilfred. To start off, I will call upon Professor Patrick, his successor as the head of the Department of Christian Studies at the University of Madras, to pay his tribute. Over to Professor Patrick.
I was really fascinated by the book, though I did not understand fully the depth of analysis, the rigor of scholarship that was there, but combined with very, very appealing metaphors, sunset in the east, that really attracted me. I began to think very high of this theologian. And when I got an opportunity to meet him in St. Paul's Seminary, it was yet again a very inspiring experience. I saw him in a very, very simple dress, wearing dhoti, the Indian style dress. And that too, part of it was torn and it was hanging. Such a great person, well known all over the world, being very simple at home, that really inspired me. Then I went on following him up, and then I came over to the University of Madras and began to study under him. He taught me MPhil, and I did my doctorate under him. I had chosen my topic to do a research on a particular religious phenomenon, but then the analytical key was given by him. He suggested to me to take the subaltern approach to study this phenomenon. Now, subaltern approach has stayed with me all through my life in my research. It was his contribution to me. Not only to me, I'm sure many of my colleagues who studied under him have received this impetus to approach reality, approach the divine mystery from the perspective of the marginalized and subalterns. He once wrote, God has pitched God's tent along the margins. Very, very inspiring statement. Similarly, several other theological themes that he handled have inspired me and all the colleagues. Yet another phrase that he always used was rooted transcendence. Rooted transcendence. Being rooted in a particular tradition, but still going forth towards other traditions, including other religions, other rationalities. Christianity and other rationalities was one of the good articles that he wrote. So he went on inspiring people to push the boundaries, to go beyond, but yet be rooted in a particular tradition. That was a really inspiring learning that I got from him. When I got an opportunity to teach at the Department of Christian Studies, having him as the head of the department, I began to experience the real dynamism of the person. Really multiple capabilities came to the fore. It is very rare that a scholar generally is also capable of administrative capacities and financial mobilizations and things like that. But everything inhered in this person wonderfully. He was at his scholarship, went abroad so many times and went on producing books. At the same time, he was also equally involved in the administration of the department, as well as several other responsibilities given to him in the university. Interestingly, one event that remains very fresh in my memory was the way he was involved heart and soul in contesting a seat for the syndicate. There were always groups which put up candidates. But Professor Felix Wilfred, on his own, contested the election. And on his own, he won almost the winning point. I think only 1 or 2 votes were less. Anyway, many professors said on his own, getting so many votes itself was something, a great achievement at the University of Madras. And he was very, very dynamic and relentless, meeting with all professors, going to their home. We all accompanied him. Students were the only campaigners for him. So such a dynamic person he was. And then he also was then involved in putting up this ACS center, taking care of the construction work, all happening so fine way at the same time. So such a fine personality he was. And I received also the impetus to write and do public theology from him. He brought this theme to the Indian and the Asian soil probably. Of course, there were also others in the Asian soil, but then in the Indian soil, he was the one who brought it. You all know that he was so much involved in interpreting liberation theology to the Indian context in terms of proposing or exploring contextual theology. When he explores the theme, you find the depth in it and you enjoy the depth. He is very perceptive. One of the critical analyses that he made with regard to the way Indian society functions, Indian society treats Indian Christianity was very perceptive. He said the so-called caste consciousness of the Indian society does not acknowledge those who are serving the society. Indian Christianity has served the society so much, but it is not acknowledged, it is not recognized. This is how they treat the so-called subalterns. And Indian Christianity also becomes a subaltern entity in the Indian context. Very perceptive analysis that he had. And then, as regards the public theology, he knew very well that it is not the West, it is not the USA, it is not European countries where Christianity was majority, but yet he took up the challenge to do public theology even as a minority community. Christianity as a minority community can contribute its very, very significant share in the transformation of the Indian society, he believed. Until the end of his life, he went on exploring different themes associated with public theology. And he rose to be a public intellectual as regards Indian Christianity was concerned. We are all happy, proud to have been educated by him. And I'm personally happy that I got a good share of my life shared with him as a student, as a teacher, and a co-researcher. And I'm more proud to say that he comes from my own district, from a very remote village, a very kind of a simple rural village folk who raised him up, and he rose to the zenith of becoming an international theologian. I thank God for this wonderful person. May he continue to inspire many more researchers like me in the days to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patrick, one of the most illustrious students of Professor Felix, who also succeeded him in heading the department in a very, very successful way. A big thanks to you. Now
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I call upon Dr. Lawrence, another PhD scholar of Professor Felix. Dr. Lawrence Fernandez is currently the principal of Sacred Heart College, Satyanilayam, Chennai. Over to Dr. Lawrence.
Good evening to you all, and thank you, Father James, for inviting me to be here. My association with Father Dr. Felix Wilfred from 1999, when I joined the Department of Christian Studies as a MPhil scholar. He was my dissertation guide at MPhil, also my PhD guide. I worked on popular religiosity. He was my guide, a mentor. Later years, I joined after my PhD. I helped in Department of Christian Studies as a visiting professor quite a few years. I think of him as the second founder of Department of Christian Studies. He gave an intellectual impetus and brought it to a very high level. The department started by Father Thomas George. Later, after his retirement, he moved to Panayur. Panayur is very close to my place, Satyanilayam. Therefore, he was quite often, we invited me and our students to participate in many of the programs. And I've been there quite often to his place, to attend the program, to listen to him, to be inspired by his lectures, conferences, and other programs. He has come a few times to my place, Satyanilayam, for give lectures. Last year, he was the keynote speaker when we inaugurated the academic year. We invited him, and he delivered the keynote address here at Satyanilayam. And throughout the past 25 years, we have been well connected right through. I want to point out three things that stands out as I see him. First of all, his commitment to research. He's a committed scholar, dedicated, devoted, and one single focus. Hard work. He worked very hard. His few what you call key elements for Dr. Patrick already informed you in the earlier talk. Subaltern perspective, Asian theology, synodal perspective, civil society, very clear. Therefore, not only he had it, he also imparted it to his scholars. That is something very beautiful about it. Therefore, each one of us carry a glimpse of or a touch of that desire, dream of Father Felix in our life as well. Secondly, his team spirit. We research scholars, 10 of us were there with Father Dr. We used to gather once in 2 months, once in 3 months. We used to all come together nearly more than 1.5 days together, and not only learning, research, and studying and exchanging views and ideas, we became a team. Though he was scholarly worked as a team. Therefore, even now, even at this, after so many years, we, the team, are still friends connected to each other. For example, Patrick, James are all part of that team, so to say. Second. Third is the simplicity of life. I've seen Professor Wilfred quite closely in department, even Panayur, very simple person to relate with. Internationally eminent scholar, but very quite pleasant and easy to approach. And I know he's someone whom can always relate so comfortably. So I realize such a wonderful genius has gone before us, leaving a rich legacy. May he rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, friend. Thank you, Dr. Lawrence, for your wonderful, brief sharing of Professor Felix's life and your experience with him. Now I have a small request from Father Emmanuel S.J. from Sri Lanka. He is a very senior person, 90-year-old. He would like to share his thoughts on Professor Felix. Over to Father Emmanuel S.J.
I am Father S.J. Emmanuel, 91 years old. I'm much older than Felix Wilfred, but I was living with him in Rome. When I was doing my doctorate, he was doing his studies. and then later as a theologian in Rome, but we worked also in Asia for the Asian Bishops' Conference. So I have been a good friend of Father Felix Wilfred, and his death is sudden and so early in life. I was mourning deeply because he is a big loss to the theological world, especially we Tamils. He was a theologian. We had the same Professor Bodapivich as our doctorate guide and all that. And we worked on the same lines of ecclesiology in the churches. And we were, for the Asian bishops, I remember 1986, September, we were both in Tokyo, invited by the Asian bishops to prepare themselves for the 87 Synod on Laity. Felix Wilfred and myself, we were the ecclesiologists. We have been working together, and I appreciate very much Felix Wilfred's habit of not confronting but working with what is given, and he goes a long way. He is not confrontational. He has worked with people with whom I could not personally work with. For example, Cardinal Ratzinger, he could not stand me, but he worked with him also, the International Commission of Theologians, and he was the editor of the Concilium, and he never fought with him. But with Ratzinger, he wrote against me and he fought with me for a long time. Anyhow, he was a non-confrontational but progressive theologian. Felix Wilfred, he has come to Sri Lanka also. And we have been in the Asian team giving so much value to his contribution because he has his own style of presenting things, not confrontationally, but amicably, to make others understand his different views, yet progressive and taking people along. That gave him a big hand in the Concilium magazine, and he is appreciated by many theologians, not only in India, Sri Lanka, but also in the Western world. He was invited in Germany when I was there for conferences in Germany, London, other European countries, and he could stand up to any theologian of Western world, and he could reasonably argue our case, especially with regard to interreligious dialogue with religions of Asia, with our differences of cultures and religions in Asia. We have to evolve a theology that can be in dialogue with the religions and cultures of Asia. So Felix Wilfred is a big loss at this time because he is only 74 and he could have contributed another 25 years of theological work in this field. I'm really sorry that we have lost a great theologian and a model for all of us theologians, not to confrontationally stop our ways, but to progressively advance, amicably settling issues and progressing it. I encourage his successors like Father Jnana Patrick and others to continue his work at the center where he started. I have been there in Madras, and to continue his work, especially I wish that Christianity becomes a Tamil Christianity, and it has to be rooted itself also. Although Jesus Christ was an Asian, but Christianity has been formed in Europe and later brought to Asia. But now we have the resources to make the Christian message root in the Tamil world, in the Tamil cultures, and then be acceptable as a standing religion of Asia. I really feel the loss of Father Felix Wilfred, and I will encourage all his successors and collaborators to continue his great work in publishing and writing and all these things, so that theologically we will be better equipped and we will be more fitting Christian. Thank you very much for this opportunity to remember my friend Felix Wilfred. We had a long friendship at Propaganda College, Rome, and later in Rome and also in Asia. And we used to meet Dandak. I'll end this by a little joke. when I first met Felix Wilfred in Rome as an Indian, I told him a joke about the Indian teachers who came to Sri Lanka and taught in English. And then they used to say, Dandaku, Dandaku. Don't talk, don't talk. Felix Wilfred took that and he labeled me every time he called me Dandaku, Dandaku. Thank you very much for this chance to pay my respects to my friend Felix Wilfred. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father James Ponea, for the opportunity. We are also organizing a separate event in Jaffna. I spoke to Father Jnana Patrick yesterday, and we will be inviting all the scholars over here. So thank you for this opportunity to allow Father Emmanuel, because he's old and he has to go now. And I will record my sentiments and other ideas later. Thank you very much.
Many thanks to veteran SJ Emmanuel for his beautiful message. Okay, now we'll move on to the next speaker of the day. I call upon Dr. Anthony Lawrence, the president of St. Peter's Pontifical Institute, Bangalore. Over to Father Lawrence. Lawrence, you have to unmute yourself. Lawrence, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Father James. At the outset, I would like to say I am too small actually to speak about Professor Dr. Felix Wilfred, who has no parallel actually in Asia, to say the truth. I would like to express the deepest sympathies and prayerful condolences on behalf of the entire institute, the St. Peter's Pontifical Institute, Bangalore, to the close relatives of Professor Dr. Felix Wilfred, the Bishop of Puriturai and the clergy of the Puriturai Diocese, and of course to Father James Ponea, the Deputy Director of ACCS, Madam Nirmal, Father Jnana Patrick, Father R.K., Father John Baptist, and all those who are closely associated, who were closely associated with Father Felix. At three level, I can speak: personal level, at the department level, institute, all the three levels. Personally, I owe a lot to Father Felix for what I am today. He has played a very significant role in a subtle but very strong way to my growth, and particularly for what I am today. Even to get elected as president, his role has been very highly significant. In the recent past, for at least 4 years, St. Peter's organized some 5 conferences. One was, of course, by the Bible department, which they did on their own. The other 4 conferences, Father Felix was the brain behind. He was everything. He not only conceived every time the idea and the theme, but at every stage, every point, he was guiding me. Till the end. Until the end, he will be there. And a day ahead, he will be there. And this is, to say the least, his contribution is so incalculable for the growth of the institute and the department. Also, to have the curriculum revamped for the Department of Missiology, for the Felix role is indescribable. But for him, we would not be having the present shape of the curriculum, definitely. During Corona time, at least 4 or 5 times, we sat together with Father Michael Amaladas for at least 3 hours, 4 hours, like at a stretch. Such was Father's sacrifice. And he consciously loved St. Peter's. He wanted St. Peter's to grow to greater heights. He openly has said also on a few occasions, the St. Peter's Pontifical Institute one day will become St. Peter's Pontifical University. And that dream, I hope, through his intercession, powerful intercession, will be realized, if not immediately, shortly, but with some time. And actually, I came to know 15 years before through Father Sebastian Perianan, our former rector, who repeatedly used to tell me, call Felix, call him here to St. Peter's, call him here, you will see the change. And begin to read that book, get hold of that book. Just last month it was published, he said, Asian Public Theology. And I was preparing to go abroad and to go to Rome for my doctoral studies. And that was the first